Larry King, the hell with you. This is TWI, Troy Wilde Interviews. Charlie Rose, what are you, like 83? The hell with you. This is TWI, Troy Wilde Interviews. Piers Morgan, you, sir, are a moron. This is TWI, Troy Wilde Interviews.
And here we go with episode 20 of Troy Wilde Interviews, the broadcast quality podcast dedicated to interviewing comics, comedians, whatever you want to call funny people in the United States and all over the world. Again, episode 20, as you would say it in French, episode 20. In Spanish, episode 20. Episode 20. Today, from New Jersey, Joyce Artinian. When I say New Jersey, I mean a suburb of New York City, Hackensack. Baby, that's right. Joyce Artinian joins us in just a little while. Of course, this podcast is available on our website at troywilde.com, Apple Podcasts, or iTunes. They rebranded Apple Podcasts. Also Stitcher Radio, also Google Play, also on YouTube. Episode 20, I am having the time of my life talking to funny people all over the country and all over the world. What could be more fun than that? That is fun. And I thank you for listening. The best thing that you can do for us, share us with your friends because you want to, not because you feel sorry for me. Okay, do it if you feel sorry for me too. That's just fine. About our guest today, Joyce Artinian is a comic. She's also a teacher. Now, when I say that, she's a teacher during the day and a comic at night, you think, oh, she's a poser. She only has 1 foot in the swimming pool. And I thought that was a possibility at first. You know, she's working with a net. She's not taking the plunge. But after you listen to the interview, you'll find out that in some respects, she has more guts than just taking the plunge. She's doing her comedy in a meaningful way and taking risks with her material that when I watched her material, I thought, wait a minute, you're a teacher and she doesn't drop any blue words, but some of her content, definitely adult. And she's good with it. She's just good with it. So to me, that shows more guts than just doing it. Maybe not more guts, but in its own way as much. Because if I wanted to keep my job, I would be filtering it. I would be telling the safest jokes possible. She's not. She's going for it. She does an open mic in New York City, in Greenwich Village. She's all over the local comedy scene there. When we're talking, the inevitable question comes up. I ask deep, probing questions like, gee, Joyce, tell me your biggest comedic influences. See, right there, that proves that I am a journalist. I ask questions like that. You would expect the usual Louis C.K. or, Roseanne, female comedians, whoever they are, whoever the male famous comedians are. Ellen, somebody like that maybe. No, she says Howard Stern. And I'm like, oh, I like you a lot. She's like, yeah, Howard Stern. When she was a little girl, in the car, her dad would drive her to Catholic school, and she's like 9 years old, and they'd listen to Howard Stern. So she loves Howard Stern. And I bring up, and she also says Carol Burnett. That makes more sense. Carol Burnett at one end of the spectrum, Stern at the other. And Howard Stern, as I point out to Joyce, and she fully understands, outside of New York City, where you can listen to him every day, up until 10 years ago when you could listen to him on Sirius every day, no matter where you live. You didn't really have an understanding of Howard Stern and his interview skills. You only saw the headlines about strippers and lesbians and FCC fines, just a shock jock. Joyce was able to experience Stern for his true talent of interviewing people and what a genius the guy really is. So this brings up a memory for me, and I say to Joyce, I was about to work in a news demo to this podcast, either this episode, before she mentioned Stern. I'm like, how do I work this thing in? I want to get this out there. And she brings up Howard Stern. I said, I'm going to include this demo that I sent to Howard Stern in the spring of 2013 when I applied to be his news guy and was in the running for real to replace his then retiring news anchor on Howard 100. If you don't know what Howard Stern does on Sirius satellite radio, he does a newscast every hour about his show. So all the people that come on his show, he interviews everybody. I mean, everybody. They'll cut up sound bites and say, Chris Rock this morning on the Howard Stern show told Howard that he's considering getting a divorce. Boom, into a soundbite from Chris Rock. So I explained to Joyce that in May of 2013, I saw this job. I applied for it. I was in contention consideration. They were communicating with me. They liked my stuff. One problem. I knew in my gut you couldn't drag me away from my son. My son was just a year old at the time. And as I tell Joyce, remember the interview has already happened. I tell Joyce that had this been 2 or 3 years earlier, man, I would have soiled myself. Holy mackerel, this would be a dream job. But now the unequivocal, undoubted love of my life, my little boy is a year old. I can't leave. His mother can't leave. I can't leave because of that. You know, she's my ex-wife, has other kids, so she's not leaving, right? So I basically just didn't do as good as I could have. But I have been dying to play the demo. The demo is overproduced. I did it in kind of an animated way, kind of like today on Howard 100, Amy Schumer talks about her brand new show on FX, sort of animated, like not totally animated, but I should have been more serious. My heart and my gut just wasn't in it. But I'm going to play that before we go into the interview with our good friend Joyce Artinian, because I want you to hear this demo. It was my brush with greatness. I had a shot, man. I had a shot. It was like all the work and all the years and all the tears and all the frustration of being in morning radio and news and rock morning shows. This was my gig. I mean, I was part of rock morning shows. I'd come in as a news guy and become part of it, like a 2-person, 3-person morning show. But I was kind of the go-to news guy and then, you know, the morning show partner. So I thought, this is the ideal thing. Stern had to pay $300,000-$400,000 a year. Joyce also says, so I'm going to play that news demo shortly. Joyce also brings up Carol Burnett. And I have some different feelings about Carol Burnett. If you think of, let's say, female comics, you think of Lucille Ball, old school, Phyllis Diller, old school, Roseanne Barr, Ellen DeGeneres. You get sort of a funny, good vibe. But Carol Burnett, there's some darkness there. And the great thing about this podcast, I record the opening after the interview. So sometimes after the interview, you get that, especially if you listen to the interview, I should have said this. And I started to talk to Joyce that, you know, Carol Burnett does have some darkness, and I go off a little bit. But the part that I really wanted to say to Joyce was that, Joyce, this is how I feel about Carol Burnett. Let's say I'm dating, me, Troy, I'm dating Carol Burnett. Things are going along really well. And then I meet Joyce. And I say, okay, you know what? Things are taking off with Joyce. So I'm dating both Carol and Joyce, right? And I like Joyce better than Carol. So I tell Carol it's over because, you know, I'm moving on with Joyce, right? Well, I'm thinking Carol Burnett has a real dark side. I'm thinking Carol Burnett would kill us both. I don't know why. I just have this feeling that Carol Burnett would not handle that well. And it's not because it's me. It's just dating someone. I don't think she would handle it well. She's dating me, and I'm like, Carol, I got to go. I met Joyce. We have more in common. You know, I don't know. I got to move on. You know, I think they would find Joyce and I dead in a car somewhere. I just have that feeling. I don't know why. And I want you to think about this, because there's some truth in what I'm saying. Carol Burnett has some shit going on, man. I am not kidding you. Howard Stern's out there. You just know, because Howard Stern talks about all this shit. Carol Burnett has a bunch of shit going on that we just don't know about. That whole variety show shit in the 70s, that was the clown side of Carol Burnett. On the other side of Carol Burnett, there's something there, man. There's some malice there that if you pissed her off, you heard my example. That's the part I didn't get to with Joyce. So Joyce Artinian, you can look her up on Facebook. She does an open mic at one of those clubs. She talks about it in New York City, and she's developing a name. And go to YouTube, Joyce Artinian, Artinian. And just type that in YouTube, and you can see her. Support her shows. Help her break free of the teaching gig. And what more noble profession than teaching? I could tell when I started to communicate with Joyce on Facebook. I have about 4,000 friends on Facebook. They're all comics connected to comedy. Her grammar is perfect. It's like hi, comma, Troy, comma, and then these big words in this perfect grammar. I'm like, oh, I thought I was talking to some type of corporate executive or something. I mean, and then during the interview, she uses the word ambivalent. And I'm not quite sure what that means. And ambiguous? I kind of like, you're not sure. Ambiguous. He's ambiguous. He didn't really get to the point. Could have multiple meanings. But ambivalent. I'm like, I'm unsure. Ambivalent? Ambivalent. She used that word. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. Ambivalent. So she's smart. I'm not. So here's what we'll do. We'll play the Howard Stern demo, and then we'll go right into the interview with Joyce Artinian. Please keep in mind that the content of this news demo is from Howard Stern's unfiltered, uncensored show on Sirius satellite radio. Please keep in mind that this content in no way is connected to Joyce Artinian, who is as pure as driven snow. People like myself, like Howard Stern, let's face it, guys with limited intellect, find this type of content funny, and again, has no reflection on Joyce Artinian or people like Joyce Artinian. Simply people like myself who find this type of humor funny at times. Not always, but sometimes. Here we go, the Howard Stern demo, and then our interview exclusive with Joyce Artinian on Troy Wilde Interviews, episode 20.
From high atop the Howard Stern building in Midtown Manhattan, no more bullshit. This is a Howard 100 News Brief.
I'm Troy Wilde. In Studio 69, Howard Stern brought out a changing Mark Wahlberg. Mark has gone religious and more family.
Yeah, well, I didn't go today. I went yesterday. Went to St. Patrick's, but I just said my prayers. I got my prayer book and stuff, so I did that this morning.
Man, that's a whole different guy.
I'm so blessed and fortunate. I don't want to do anything to mess it up.
And no side pussy whatsoever.
Absolutely not.
Wahlberg is promoting his new film, Pain and Gain. Later, comic Amy Schumer discussed her love life and career. Amy told Howard she made close to $1 million last year. Amy has a new show on Comedy Central, Inside Amy Schumer, premiering April 30th.
They let me make the show of my dreams. It's sketch, it's stand-up, it's man on the street, and then I interview somebody every episode. Like somebody I've never gotten to talk to, like a dominatrix, or just a guy with a huge cock, or like somebody who loves Jesus.
A tragedy for Nicole Bass, the female bodybuilder and guest on The Stern Show. Nicole's husband, Bob, has died of a massive heart attack. Bob was 64.
And I said, Bob, wake up, wake up. He wouldn't wake up, and I tried to straighten out his arm, and he was in rigor.
Howard 100 News sends condolences to Nicole Bass. Howard Stern is happy with the show's opening song, and it's not going to change, he says. It's Howard 100 News you need to know. Listen to Greg Fitzsimmons live from Los Angeles, Fitz at 10 Eastern on Howard 101. Now, today's poll question from Howard 100 News. What was your favorite part of today's Stern Show? Your choices are A, Mark Wahlberg in Studio 69, B, Amy Schumer visits Howard Stern, C, Tales from America's Got Talent, D, The News with Robin. To vote, go to SiriusXM.com/Howard Howard. Twitter The Stern Show anytime. Get news from the show and updates from H100 News. Go to twitter.com/Stern Show. For traffic and weather for Boston, Los Angeles, Tampa, St. Petersburg, and other great American cities, go to Sirius XM, channels 132 to 140. Another Howard 100 News brief at the top of the hour, or as close as we can get.
Hi, Troy.
Hi, Joyce. How are you?
Good. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great. Where are you exactly?
I'm in Hackensack, New Jersey.
And Hackensack, where is that compared to New York City?
Yeah, like driving, I guess if there's no traffic, about 30 minutes. Not even sometimes.
So realistically, you are like Mesa is to Phoenix. I'm in Phoenix. Mesa's, 20 minutes from Phoenix. It's all one city. You're kind of like a suburb or are a suburb of New York, basically.
Exactly. It's very good for commuting, right, all that. Mm-hmm.
Are you from that area, born and raised?
Pretty much. It's sort of funny. In between, I've lived elsewhere, but yeah, I'm like on the same street as the hospital I was born in. So I tell people I didn't go that far in life,
Well, you came back. You're like a bird that left the nest that eventually flew back.
That's right. Yep.
And why did you come back?
Oh my, where shall I start? Do we have time for this? Basically, it's so funny. After I graduated from college, I went to NYU, so I lived on campus in the city. It never occurred to me to have roommates and all do that whole thing, And by then, my parents had split up, so my mom got a deluxe apartment in the sky here in Hackensack. So came time, I graduated and everything. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm just going to live with her. It was just like this, like no thinking, no planning ahead. And I did that for a little while. And then, over time, it was like, okay, this is not going to work. So I had, a thing where I guess I moved to Hoboken at one point with like a roommate, like through some classified ad. I did that for a year. Came back to Hackensack. Then I went to the city at some point for like about 3 years or so, and I shared with 3 roommates a place up near Columbia, Morningside Heights. And then it's funny, like I don't know, my father for some reason has an aversion to New York City, so he I guess somehow like subliminally like put messages in my head over the years, like don't live there or don't work there or whatever. And I guess, eventually I said, you know what, let me come back here. And it was like the day before Hurricane Sandy hit. So the timing was perfect. And we were in the dark for like a week, but it was fun. And then maybe less than a year after that, I like got my own place down the street. So it's like I'm on my own, but like close enough with family,
Are you an Italian sort of New Yorker? Your families are all like, your mom and your cousins and your sisters. It's very... Because that tends to be a very family type of culture.
It is. It's funny. I'm actually first-generation American. My parents immigrated from Lebanon in the 70s when the Civil War was going on there. And I'm Armenian on my dad's side and Lebanese on my mom's. And so we have a lot of that same sort of Mediterranean, Middle Eastern, family closeness and whatnot.
And at what point do you break into comedy, or do you say, I want to try this?
Yeah, well, it's so funny because I got a lot of influences early on growing up. Like, thanks to, I guess, my dad exposed me a lot to stuff like whether it was on TV or on the radio. So, but actually doing it myself, funny enough, so I'm in New York City. I'm at NYU. You would think, oh, wow, she's like right in the heart of like the comedy area, like, downtown, like on McDougal Street. And there's also, I never set foot once in those places while I was an undergrad. And so fast forward, like, when I graduate, somehow I found out about improv, and Upright Citizens Brigade, UCB, was just like starting up in Chelsea around, like, I guess it was 2000, 2001. And I took a level 1 class. I was like, oh, this is fun, but I had a full-time like corporate job at the time. And so I just took it. I was like, oh, this is like a hobby and all that, but I really enjoyed it. And then way after that, stand-up sort of came about. It was like 2008. I'd gotten laid off, and I don't know, I had like one of those, it's called Gotham Writers Workshop, and they have kiosks all over the city. And I looked in the catalog, and there was a stand-up comedy writing class. And I just always loved, being a watcher and listener of comedy. But, I guess it didn't really occur to me to actually do it myself till years later. So I take this class, and it was wonderful. But again, I let the momentum slip. I did it for a little while after the class, and then it sort of fizzled out because, again, I had a day job. So, yeah, so that was that. Oh, my gosh, is this, like, crazy? This is a crazy timeline, right? I'm like, oh, I don't know. So I'll keep going. But anyway, so the next time was, so by then, I had become a teacher in New York City, and so it was a second career for me. And while I'm doing that, you have the summers off, right? So I'm off usually July and August. And the same teacher, his name, I'll give him a plug. His name is David Labarca. He's awesome. He teaches that class at a Gotham Writers Workshop. And in between, during all those years, I would sort of go to his workshops and just watch and give feedback to comics. I enjoyed being behind the scenes. And he let me know that the same class I had taken 8 years prior was going on, and he, wanted to have, encouraged me to get back into it, so I did. And that was 2015 maybe, the summer of 2015, I think. And then last summer, I started my own weekly open mic at the same theater where he used to hold some of his workshops, and I haven't looked back since. I'm like, I have to stay on this track. Of course, being a first generation, I don't know if that's typical, but my mom is mortified. She's just like, what are you doing? And sometimes I feel like I probably would have been better off as a stripper because I would have made more money. Yeah.
So let's back up. What was your first career?
Yes. Okay. So I went to business school in undergrad for my bachelor's, and I just had these positions, whether it was in the public relations or marketing departments of different industries, mostly cosmetics for a while. And then I did some consulting work, so I had different clients, agency and that kind of thing. So it was always under the marketing and public relations umbrella. And then when that recession happened in 2008, got laid off, and I said, do I keep doing the same thing and going after the same kinds of positions, or do I make a change now? And no one in my family had ever been a teacher, but there's an amazing teacher I had in high school, Mr. Kennard. He's still alive and kicking, thank goodness. He's retired down south, but he taught humanities and public speaking. And so taking those classes with him, and he just made it so entertaining. He had this West Virginian drawl. It was just amazing. Out here in New Jersey, you'd be like, where'd this guy come from, And I just never forgot him, and he was just really charismatic and made it fun. So I said, you know what, I think I'd like teaching because I love learning, and I guess I had that theatrical way about me. So it's been a nice, job to go parallel to comedy.
And you may not immediately think that teaching and comedy have a lot in common, but if you start to sort of analyze it, when you're a teacher, you have an audience all day of students. And it's also, It tends to be a passion play because there's not a lot of money attached to teaching. So people in education tend to do it for reasons of passion, which is very similar to comedy. You have an audience, but most of the time you're starving to death and you're doing it because you love it.
Right, yeah, there are definitely some parallels with that. I've noticed as the more I do it, it's like, oh, wow, yeah, definitely very connected.
So is your goal to start to make a living as comedy so you can sort of move away from teaching, or do you want to keep doing both, or what is your goal?
Yeah, so I've been thinking a lot about that lately. I would say my short-term goal, maybe within the next 5 years, is to keep teaching or public speaking in some capacity, And it's funny, I just recently got, a suggestion, and I had thought about it before. So my quote-unquote school audience has always been elementary for the most part, so 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. But going back to my undergrad studies, which were business, someone told me recently, hey, why don't you get certified to teach business in high school, high school level business course. I was like, ooh, So I'm considering very seriously going back to get certified for that. And so I guess I would say, for, like I said, within the next 5 years, I would want to sort of pursue that. But hey, if someone comes a knocking and says, we want you to do this for a living, or there's the right opportunity, I would definitely go for it.
Does the teaching help prepare you for comedy in the sense that you do have the students during the day and then you can go get in front of an audience at night?
I would say so. And I mean, the way I scheduled my open mic, Troy, is it's very beneficial to me. But also, other people appreciate, I guess, the timing of it as well. So I have it on Friday early evenings on Friday, usually from 5 to 6, right in Midtown. And it's just a nice thing to look forward to at the end of the week because, we have a lot of things we take care of during the weekends, the educators and all that. So for me, it's like almost a treat, and I just love having the comics who come and do their thing. And we really, I guess I pride myself on it being very supportive and more workshop-y than just people sitting there and, I guess I hear that all the time where people have told me, oh, this mic's actually fun and, all that. I go to these other ones and people like leave right after their thing and all. So I'm all about like within that hour, trying to keep everyone around so everyone can see each other's stuff. And the venue where I have it, the Producers Pub, is really cool because there's always actors and other people coming in and out. We usually do it in the bar area where there's like a little stage. So sometimes we'll just get impromptu audience members, which is the best because this way you really know how your material comes across, not just the fellow comics, but just the general public.
I saw some of your stuff on YouTube. Some of it is fairly adult. I watched your video. You're very funny.
Thank you.
Does it concern you at all that you're a teacher? Do you have to play that where, okay, I'm a teacher, so there's some family values there, then at night you're going off and doing the comedy? I think it's great because you're taking a risk, but have you had anybody kind of bust your balls over that?
Thankfully, no. And I actually did a little performance at the encouragement of some of my colleagues last year, like an end-of-year sort of party thing they had. So, luckily it hasn't. But I guess also I try, but I definitely don't curse or drop any F-bombs, stuff like that. So I feel like language-wise I keep it clean. And a lot of my stuff is probably like more innuendo and sort of double entendre type thing. Like I try not to make it too directly.
It sounds like the police are there to get you, Joyce.
Really? Oh yeah, they are actually where I live. So like I'm down the street from the hospital and the police cars and this and that. Yeah, it's almost like I'm living in the city still. I have a view of like the city skyline, like a little pocket there. So yeah, that's the what is it? The censorship police, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's where Donald Trump lives, right? That's where his whole thing is. Now, when you live in New Jersey, it sounds to me like you have the best of both worlds because you can afford to live there, have some quality of life, and not necessarily want to shoot yourself in the face when you have to pay your $8,000 a month in rent, and still go to the city. It's right there. It's like, oh, if I want to go do comedy in Greenwich Village or at Dangerfields or someplace like that, I'm half hour, 40 minutes away, and I don't have to pay like $9,000 for a studio.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm sometimes surprised why more people don't follow my lead in that. And again, like the venue where I chose to do the open mic every week is right near the Port Authority bus terminal, so it's very convenient for people who are on the west side, especially like Hell's Kitchen neighborhood, and also like New Jerseyites, I guess you can call us New Jerseyans. Like I'll post it on Facebook for like even New Jersey groups because it's very easily accessible, that location.
And working those clubs, do you ever run into any big-name comedians? I know Jim Gaffigan, Louis C.K., they kind of work out their routines in the greater New York area.
Yeah, I've heard of those encounters. I heard I think it was at, I'm blanking now. Oh, the Comedy Cellar, where like all in one night, this other comedian, his name's John Lasseter, he's very funny. He ended up being there when it was like this, not trifecta, whatever, pentafecta. Well, there was like 5 people. I think it was like Amy Schumer and Chris Rock and like all these people showed up one night. This was like in the last year or something. So unfortunately, I was not a witness to that. But one time I did have to walk through the Comedy Cellar to use the restroom, and Aziz Ansari was on stage. So that was cool.
Outstanding. And does any part of you say, okay, I want to go and work without a net. I'm going to quit my day job and whatever the universe gives me. I know it's scary and it's a bold, ballsy thing to do, but somewhere inside of you, do you know that you have to do that or that you may want to do that to really go for it in comedy? Do you think somewhere down the road that may compel you to say, okay, I'm going for it?
Right, like full force, where it's like my daily round-the-clock thing. It's funny. So when I was laid off, I had that time to sort of feel like what it's like to be unemployed, and I did not like it. So I'd have to say it's one of those things where they say don't quit your job till you have a new one. So at this point, and I guess, at my age, not like I'm like a woman of a certain age, but, I'm not a spring chicken 20-something anymore. So I would say I'm pretty, practical, and I don't think I would, just throw caution to the wind and say, hey, let's see what happens. Because I feel, like you said, living in Jersey and then working in the city and then having my mic and being around and going to, performing at these different places like Broadway Comedy Club, Greenwich Village Comedy Club, etc., and getting these other gigs through, people either I know or we have common friends or through Facebook and other wonderful opportunities, I feel like it's just such a perfect balance at this point in my life that I guess I don't need to take such a risky or make such a risky move.
Does any part of you want to start a family, have kids?
Oh, my gosh, is this a therapy session? No, I'm kidding. It's so funny. I'm one of those people who, I wouldn't say I'm undecided, but maybe ambivalent. I don't know. I read an article not too long ago that said if your friends are married or getting married and having kids, it's almost like contagious, like it rubs off on you, you're more likely. And my circle of friends have never been like that. I'm never one of those people who's always a bridesmaid and this and that, and that's not my scene. But, hey, you know what? If the right person comes along, then I'd be open to it. But just for the sake of it, no.
And your material comes from where? What inspires you? What are your jokes about?
It's so funny. I was at another comic open mic yesterday, and I said, you know what? I'm so sick and tired of hearing other people and myself mention the word dating. Enough already. Let's get off of that topic. So I'm trying to leave that, not make it as a central a theme. I have to be honest. I'm really into talking about that time of the month for women. I feel like I'm on almost like a mission to make people aware of what it's like and what we go through and stuff, but from a comical point of view, of course. And so I'll talk about that. I'll do observations of just things and people.
When you do that, that time of the month thing, do you get a groan from the crowd? Because that can make men uncomfortable. Because men are like, yo. Oh, right. Let's not talk about that now. That's just, I don't know what that's all about, but let's talk about sports. Let's talk about who you dated.
Right. Change the subject. Yeah. I try not to make it like a gross out thing. I can give you a little sampler. Basically, my standard joke is, there's all these different brands like Tampax, Kotex, Always, and I think we should call it sometimes because it usually happens once a month, right? And then I'm like, eventually, never, which is menopause. And then, soon after that, it all depends. So playing a word on all these different brand names. So I try to keep it not get too gory or, I don't want to gross people out.
Yeah, no, I get you. And internet dating, I saw that on your video and I kind of thought, I wonder if that's going to make people uncomfortable just because men, but you know what? It's good. Make the guys uncomfortable because guys are always telling dick jokes, right? Guys are always talking about sex and, make them uncomfortable. And internet dating, I've thought about this lately. Someone is new on internet dating these days because everybody's doing it, but you'll still see that one person on there once in a while where they'll say, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm taking the plunge. I'm taking the plunge. I'm doing online dating. That was 2009. Now everybody is doing online dating. And when you talk about or think about influences, is there somebody that you can think of comedically who really inspired you?
Oh, I have a whole list. Before you called, I said, let me just jot some notes. So, I'll start off my first, and also because there's a radio connection, and I had a little stint in radio. Howard Stern. I don't know. There's just something about him. My dad used to put him on in the car radio when he dropped me off to school in the morning. Can you believe that? I was maybe 8 or 9, and meanwhile I was going to Catholic school. That's the funny part. We're not even Catholic, but that's a whole other story. And I was hooked, and then I would tape myself doing my own radio stuff with fake commercials and things. So he's always been a big influence. And then I heard another guest of yours mention Carol Burnett for sure. I love, she has specific characters like Mrs. Wiggins and Eunice with those Mama's Family bits. Mike Judge is another. I know he's not a comic per se, but, he created Beavis and Butthead, and he has all those other things going on. So I appreciate that sense of humor. And I've read like either memoirs or biographies of Carol Burnett, Susie Essman, Julia Sweeney, and Jen Kirkman is more of like a recent one. So I was following her, I guess, within the past couple of years. I saw her live. Yeah, so I mean, there's so many. I could name so many other people, but those are like the first ones that sort of came to my mind.
I just wrote this down. Your influences include Howard Stern and Carol Burnett. I don't know if you could be at other ends of the spectrum, although Carol Burnett could be pretty edgy sometimes. She had something in her. There's like some Carol Burnett. I wouldn't be surprised if it comes out after she's gone that at some point Carol Burnett killed a guy. You know what I mean?
Oh my God! You think she has like some sort of skeletons in her closet?
I don't know. She just strikes me like that woman. That she might have shot somebody at some point. Obviously, I'm kidding. But yeah, she strikes me like there's some darkness there possibly, but like a lot of comedic people, there's the clown and then there's the dark side of that happy face. And Howard Stern, I think you have a perspective that the majority of Americans don't have. If you haven't listened to Howard Stern on a daily basis, you probably read the headlines that he's shocking and he has strippers on there. So you really don't understand the guy as an interviewer, as a talent. He really is a genius. And I've listened to him for years on Sirius. And so I think a lot of people don't have that perspective. It's funny you brought that up. This is now episode, what the hell are we on? You're on episode 20. And I was about to try and introduce this. So my background is in radio, morning radio news for about the last 20 years. Uh-huh. In April of 2013, I saw an ad. I was working for Clear Channel Radio here. My son, I have a 5-year-old son. He was just over a year at that time. And I saw an ad from Sirius Satellite Radio that Howard Stern and the Howard 100 News are looking for a new news anchor. So I'm like, this is perfect. My background is rock morning radio and news. So basically, that's why I describe myself on my website as the love child of Tom Brokaw and Howard Stern, and so I put in for this thing. I put in for this thing and I thought, okay, there's only going to be me and about 5,000 other news guys in America. So if I just go and kill 4,999 other applicants, I might have a shot, right?
Right, you're shooing, yeah.
Yeah, so I put out a demo. I produced a demo, and I sent it to Stern, and his people said, oh, we like it. We want you to produce another one, and they wanted to rent a studio for me around here. But here's the thing. This would have been my dream up until this was April of 13, March of 12. My little boy was born March of 12, and at that point, I'm like, my wife at the time, now my ex-wife, she couldn't leave because she had kids with her first husband, so she's not leaving Arizona, which means I'm not leaving Arizona. So I think on some level, I didn't do my best work. And I got into, I don't know if I was in the final round, but I did advance. So this demo, I've been trying to think of a way to include it in the podcast. So I'm going to play it during this episode. And it's basically what they did. I just took an episode or an entire morning show of Howard 100, Howard Stern on Sirius Radio, and listened to his interviews. He'd actually interviewed Amy Schumer. This was about a show she had on FX at the time, so I had sound from her. I had audio from Mark Wahlberg talking about the movie Pain and Gain. I don't know if you remember that. He did a movie with The Rock, and this has become top of mind for me now that we brought it up. But he's like a huge influence because comedy, you can look at Howard Stern, and I've heard Howard Stern talk about this with like Chris Rock and Dave Spade. He says to those guys, I couldn't get up on stage and do what you do like for an hour. I couldn't do it for 5 minutes. And they say to him, I couldn't do your morning show for 5 minutes because it's such a different thing. But in some ways, it's exactly the same thing. You're telling jokes into a mic, and maybe the live audience thing with comedy, the environment is a little different that way. But really, you're telling jokes to an audience into a microphone. But I'm kind of like Stern. I'm far too ugly to be out in front of people.
Oh, stop. You have a face for radio, right? Oh, that's
Oh,
the biggest
boy,
thing
yeah.
people tell you. Don't say that. Come on.
Yeah, no, I look like I lived through a really bad, like one of those improvised explosive devices, and they're like, "Hey, Troy, he lived.
Man.
Everybody else died. Troy, somehow he lived, but yet look at him. It's not not great." So I definitely understand Howard Stern, and on some level, I get Carol Burnett too, because she was really unique. There was nobody like her. I don't think there's been anybody like her since.
Right, and you're going to be shocked, Troy. She was actually on his show. Like within the last year, I had Sirius in my car, and I couldn't believe it. I was some sort of road trip, I think, and there's Carol Burnett doing an interview with Howard Stern. Believe it or not.
Oh, somehow I'm not surprised because the Sirius thing. I don't know the serious thing when you can just say, and I'm not going to drop an F-bomb out of respect for you and your occupation as a teacher, but if you do that without rules, like without the FCC, somehow it just makes it okay. And I think people have accepted him, and now they can really, on a broader scale, see what a great kind of interviewer he is. He does great interviews.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
He's interesting. He's entertaining. Yeah, definitely a true talent.
Cool. Yeah. So we're definitely we have that in common. So that's cool. Yeah, he's great. And my most recent stuff that I like to listen to him do is when he imitates his mother. It's hilarious. I don't know. I can't get enough of that.
I'm going to wrap up here with one final question. Do you think you're going to go full time into comedy? Is that bug in you? I don't think it is.
You don't believe? I think you're just saying that to like sort of call my bluff and be like, "Ha! I'm going to get it out of her." Okay, let me give you a recent thing that happened, and it wasn't even planned. I think this was like divine intervention. So I'll watch sometimes the Wendy Williams show, and she was in radio, she did comedy, or she still does comedy, and I had been trying to get tickets since last year, and then I had spring break, when we're off for the week from school, and luckily I got a ticket, so I go, and they have, opportunities for audience members to get on camera and talk to her on the microphone and all that. So somehow I ended up doing like a sound off on celebrity gossip, and it was a hit. It's something I want to put on my reel. So I had like that sort of brush with that, and I got to say, and I got so much good feedback from friends, family, colleagues. Like, you really need to like do more of this stuff. Like, you have a good TV presence and that. So there's like little things that are pushing me, but I guess I wouldn't say I'm like 100% risk averse, but part of me, also wants to be practical. But you know what? That's my long answer to finally get to the point where, yes, I would like to commit to this thing full time. This will be my husband until the right man comes along, at least.
Boy, that could be your husband for a long time.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe until I'm 90, God willing, if I make it that far.
Well, watching your videos, you seem like you're very comfortable on stage. You just seem like you're totally at ease up there.
Thank you. No, that's been a real blessing. The fact that I don't have stage fright, I figure like I better, keep doing this, right?
Thank you so much, Joyce Artinian. Check her out on Facebook or YouTube. The last name Artinian. You can see her videos on there. It does help. Go on and like them. Take a look. If you're in New York City, check out open mics and some of the clubs around there. Joyce Artinian. She has something. If you just listen to that, I think you may have heard it too. There's something going on with Joyce. She has a comfort on stage. I don't know if she's a radio person at heart, because she talked about doing radio when she was a little kid and being inspired by Howard Stern. That's exactly my path. Loved radio, pretended I was on the radio, had all the usual influences in radio. So she may be inside a radio person trying comedy, or she just may be a comic who digs the radio thing. And we talk about those similarities. They're distinct in the way that you do it, comedy, live on a stage, practiced, rehearsed material. Radio like this, I don't know what I'm going to say next, unrehearsed, spontaneous, in a room alone. In some ways, they're exactly opposite. In some ways, they're exactly the same. I'm utterly confused. Check her out, Joyce Artinian, but she is super comfortable on stage. When you look at her videos, that's the first thing I noticed. There's no visible signs like, oh, that joke died, or you become more confident with your body language when you get a big laugh or two. She's just confident throughout. So maybe talk show hostess, something like that. There's something, the networks will pick up on her. There's something going on there with our friend Joyce Artinian. I want to thank you for listening to Troy Wilde Interviews, episode 20, in French, 20 in French. So if you said, hey, give me a 20 in French, you'd be like, give me a 20. Give me a 20, baby. Of course, we are on our website here at troywilde.com, Stitcher Radio, Apple Podcasts. That's just iTunes. They rebranded it. Google Play Music. The best thing you can do, get on our website, go to any of those places and comment. Say we suck, say we rock. Just tell the truth, whatever your thoughts are. The more feedback we get, the better. It adds to the rankings on all of those platforms. We're also up on YouTube. I create a little slideshow, put the podcast up so you can listen there or tell your friends about it, and share me. That's the campaign I'm starting now. Share me campaign. Share me. I don't care if you're doing it because at first I was noble about it and said, don't do it because, you feel sorry for me. I'm just fine with that now. If you feel sorry for me, which is more than likely, share me. If you think it's great content, share me. Share the thing. Get it out there. This is a labor of love. We have a comic coming up from Singapore on the next episode. You don't want to miss that. A comic from Singapore. We talk about censorship. Imagine this, performing stand-up in mainland China. Half your audience are government operatives. The motherland of censorship. That's coming up in, that's on our next episode here of Troy Wilde Interviews. Thank you so much for listening. Have an awesome day, an awesome week, an awesome month, an awesome year, an awesome life.